So good afternoon, New Bedford Guide followers. We're here with your weekly update with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. We're doing this remotely today, but it's the same old interview style that we've done. I'm just not sitting there with the mayor. So welcome, Mayor Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's a little weird because I'm looking at a little screen of my face as I'm talking to you, so it's thrown me off. It's almost like I'm looking in the mirror.
Yeah, welcome to the future of interviews, it looks like.
I'll get you.
So we'll get right into probably the hot topic of the week, which is ABC disposal. I was wondering if you can give an update. It seems like they're not as many complaints as there were when we last talked.
Well, the complaints have dropped a great deal over the last week and a half or so. I think on the first day there were over 900 ticketed receptacles, and last I looked, there were fewer than 50 a day. So, as we discussed before, we told ABC that we'd be keeping a close eye on what they were rejecting and whether they were telling people the basis of the rejection. They weren't really doing that for a while, and I think they are. It seems like it's gotten better. How much better, it's hard to know, but the complaints have certainly gone down. Where it is right now is it's still in court. The city has filed a motion to dismiss their case, just about all of the case, not quite all of it, but everything but a couple of technical counts of their complaint. And our argument is that there's no case here. ABC signed a contract to provide a service, namely to pull away to collect our garbage and our recycling materials. And they agreed to do it for a fee, and period. And their costs have gone up as a result of this policy that the Chinese government has imposed on imported recyclables. But that was the risk they bore when they signed the contract. They didn't ask for a contract that would allow them to absorb those costs and pass them on to the city. Some municipal waste haulers around the country sign contracts like this, but ABC instead wanted the certainty of having a flat fee contract, more or less, and with that comes certain risks. And it's not like I'm unsympathetic to their plight at all, but it's clear that the company's not going out of business. They just their owner, Mike Camara, said that the company's fine financially, and they just opened up a brand new facility in Rochester for which they got financing. They wouldn't have gotten a loan from a bank if they were on the brink of going out of business. So, look, I get it, but I feel sorry that they're not as profitable as they anticipated under this contract. But I'm not about to go to ask taxpayers in our city who work very hard for their money to cough up more so that ABC can become more profitable. So we'll see what the judge does with the motion to dismiss, and it's in their hands now.
Are they on a long-term contract, or is it just a one-year contract, year to year?
No, it's a 10-year contract, and we're 3 years into it at this point.
So you got 7 more years you have to live up to this contract then?
They have 7 more years that they have to perform under the contract for the fee that they agreed to.
Okay, so we'll keep people updated on the ABC update as the weeks go.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing, Mike? Again, if you think that you've been unfairly sanctioned by ABC, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. If you think they've rejected your card on a basis that's illegitimate, right? We've heard some instances of this. Let us know. Or if they put a sticker on your cart and they don't tell you why it was rejected, let us know that as well, and we'll keep on them. In general, I'd say this. We do want that which is supposed to be recycled in the recycling bin, and we want trash in the trash bin, and we want that to do that as faithfully as possible. And so if you have something that you're not sure about, you can go to the city's website, you can go to ABC's website, you can go to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection's website and figure out whether it fits. And if you still doubt whether it should go in, then leave it out. Throw it in your trash bag and put it in the trash bin.
Okay, so another big topic this month, we have the what's going on in the fishing industry. the NOAA came out with a new update on the Carlos Raphael update, and they filed more charges, and it was 22 captains, and they were looking at revoking 17 of their licenses to fish. And the civil penalties went from $1 million to $3 million. What's your take on that? Is that going to really hamper those licenses staying in the city, or are they going to go outside the city?
Well, it still remains to be seen. So that everybody's clear on what happened, NOAA issued what in effect is a superseding complaint. In other words, they had an initial set of charges that was, they filed several months ago. And those are the ones that you noted that included $1 million fine. And now in the same case, they've brought more charges. These are still allegations. These are not final decisions. And the point that I'll continue to press is that, yeah, I think everybody understands that Carlos Raphael should be sanctioned seriously because he deserves it. But the government shouldn't sweep into its dragnet hardworking fishing captains that are out there doing America's most dangerous profession to feed their families just because they were following orders from this one particular crook, Carlos Raphael. So that's so I've argued to NOAA, I've argued to anybody, to our federal delegation, I've argued to everybody that there has to be some measure of restraint. As you know, I was a federal prosecutor for a number of years. I prosecuted a number of corporate executives. And in every one of those cases, you could sweep others into the dragnet. There's always somebody else who is involved, but you have to have some sense of proportionality. And you really have to focus your efforts on the real culprit. As far as the port goes, it's concerning to me that there's a possibility that permits might be revoked. But again, the government should take serious consideration of the fact that by bringing one guy down, that can also harm a lot of others. So it's not just the captains, it's also the shoreside businesses, the settlement houses, the ice houses, the fuel companies, and others that rely on Carlos's business who might find themselves pinched because the government's overreach. So I have been, as you know, I've been out front on this, making the case for the port. At the end of the day, and I'll continue to do that, and at the end of the day, what we want is just to make sure that there are as many boats running as possible. We want as much of those permits that remain here. We want the landings to remain as high as they are because they support the livelihood of lots of folks here in the city.
So John Bullard, he used to be the mayor of New Bedford. He was at NOAA. He's not there anymore. But he says, there's 88 charges on these 20 so captains. So he's saying it's more than just Carlos Raphael. But I think what you're saying is we have to wait and see what's going to happen with actually any kind of federal prosecution on this.
Yeah, so just so people understand, the government does enforcement both through the Department of Justice and enforcing federal criminal law, and then all the federal agencies have what's called civil enforcement authority. And under that authority, generally, they can impose fines, they can revoke licenses to do business, and that's what NOAA is operating under right now. They have the authority to impose fines against people who've been issued permits or licenses under their regulations. And so, this isn't a criminal case now. The criminal case with Carlos is done. He's in jail right now. We're really focusing on the civil enforcement action. And what we have at this point is just an allegation about what he did and what others did, and some proposed penalties. And my expectation is that in the next several months we'll start to see things sorted out. Maybe by the end of the year, maybe a little bit after it, based on my conversations. The goal here again is, don't sweep all these other captains into the dragnet. If they need a slap on the wrist is appropriate, then so be it. But they need to continue to fish because the boats they're on are worth less if they're not manned by experienced captains. You can't just walk up to the docks and become a successful commercial fishing captain. It takes years of experience to get good at it. And the people who are named in this indictment are all experienced captains. So, that has value to the port. And we also want to keep the permits here. So we're working on, I know they're working on the sale of the boats and the permits to others in the port of New Bedford so that the landings remain here.
So we got about 30 questions already. So I'm going to start putting some into the screen, and I'll read them off. I don't know if you'll be able to see them or not. But so Dana Roberts asks, when will fixing the condition of our roadways become a priority? So it seems like we always get the potholes and the roadways, but if you could answer in about a minute or less or so, just that question, because I'll move to a bunch of
them. The answer is roads deteriorated because of a couple of decades worth of neglect. You have to keep investing in them, and the city was. And the good news is, in the last couple of years, for the first time in a long, long time, the city's putting its own money into its roadways. We put money into our capital budget this year, $1.6 million, to do exactly what Dana's getting at, which is to start fixing the roadways at a much faster rate than we were before. So right now, there's more road work, or I should say this summer, there's been more road work done in the city than any time in the last 20 years. And you'll continue to see that. We're going to continue to push hard. So if you drive down streets like, I just use the example, Grape and Oak Street, which is a stretch not too far from St. Luke's Hospital that's been falling apart for years, and the neighbors have been living with it, and everybody drives down has felt it. But we're fixing it. Cogswell Street, Route 18, lots of streets in between. So we're seeing that being done. We're investing in infrastructure, and over time, we'll get to a point where we can have a consistent replacement rates, and people won't have to be driving over what feels like dirt roads.
So Jonathan Hill asked, the combined water sewer rate has increased 10% every year for the last 3 years. That's 30% increase over the last 3 years. Do you expect that trend to continue?
Yeah, I mean, the reason for that, it's a great question. The rate has gone up. The water board put that rate increase in a couple of years ago, again, to rebuild infrastructure. So, water and sewer capacity and services are things that people don't see. I mean, you see when you turn the sink on and turn it off, you watch the water go down, and that's it. But the reality is there is an enormously extensive system that supports that service. And so that money in the rate increases has gone into upgrading, among other things, all the control panels at the water treatment plant, which is out in Lakeville. It's out of people's sight, but that hasn't been touched since the 70s. There's a big reservoir in North Dartmouth on High Hill Road where water is stored before it comes directly into the city. It gets pumped from the water treatment plant at Lakeville, goes to North Dartmouth and comes into the city. And that needed a whole new cover. There is a huge many-acre cover over the top of that needed to be replaced. That was millions of dollars. And then there's millions of dollars in lead service line replacements. We don't want to be in a situation like Flint, Michigan, a few years ago, where there were thousands of people, including thousands of children, that were succumbed to lead poisoning. And as an older city like Flint, we have some of the same risks. So we have one of the most aggressive lead service replacements going on anywhere. So you see that digging going on the roadways. Those are just 3 examples of the kinds of investments that people where that money's going. So the money's being very well spent, and it's needed for, again, repairs that should have been done a long time ago. And the reality is that we those are improvements that people don't see, but they're very real. So maybe Mike, it's worth just you're doing a little bit of a show on that stuff sometime. We can bring you to the treatment plan and show people what their money's going to.
Okay. So Randall Martin asks, what are you doing to bring back Daveys Locker? So, Daveys Locker used to be a fun spot in the South End. It turned into the Edge, and then the Edge closed. Is there any whispers or anything, someone maybe open it up for next summer?
Well, I'd love to see it. I mean, it's a good restaurant. I mean, obviously, that restaurant is privately owned, and the owner is going to sell it to somebody of his own choosing, regardless of what the city does. But what we've tried to do is, we've tried to send some potential sellers that way. We've worked with some groups to think about building, some kind of boating facility there that would complement it. If you remember Smugglers right next door, that building has been knocked down to make room for something else. The owner's a guy named Greg Kolpinski, who's a scalloper and whose primary job is scalloping. He's opened up a few restaurants in the city and has closed them shortly thereafter. So, that includes the one over in Goulart Square, Fernando's, a few years ago, and then he moved to the Seafire Grill downtown where Carmine's is, and then he bought Daveys and redid that, and then now he's closed that one. So, he's done this before, and I'm not pointing a finger at him, but he's been sort of a serial entrepreneur in the restaurant business. He's put a lot of money into that place, so I suspect that it's once he realizes that, he's probably not going to get all of his money, all of his investment back, because nobody does after they put brand new restaurant equipment in, that place will sell. It's too valuable of a site to sit there for long. So we'll do whatever we can to facilitate that, whether it's through, small loans or just sending potential buyers his way.
So Justin asks, are there more community centers opening up for at-risk youth and more local job opportunities?
Well, so there are a number of ways for youth in the city to get connected with job opportunities, right? So there's the youth center that's run by the Career Center, right? That's designed specifically for engaging young people in job opportunities. That there's a chance that facility, which is downtown now, will move to another downtown site. But we want to make sure that gets up to speed as quickly as possible. The other thing I'd say is, just in a more general way, for young people who are in their early 20s, and if they haven't finished school and they're looking around for jobs, I would just encourage them to both talk to, the adult education program folks in the school department, talk to Bristol Community College, talk to the Career Center, and try to get on track. Try to get that GED. Start thinking about a set of skills that you need to develop to be competitive in a workforce. We're entering a period now where it's really important for young people to develop their skills. You're going to see, in the next 10 to 20 years, many jobs going away because of automation, and people need to understand that, you're not going to be very few people are going to be in the same position for, like my parents and lots of others in the same position for 30 something years. Things are going to change, and you have to continue to develop your skills along the way. So it starts when you're young, and I really encourage people to take advantage of what the Career Center does, and the Youth Center along with them, and BCC and the school department. Get your skills going, make sure and understand that you have to constantly develop them.
So Mary Kelly has a comment. The small business owners downtown are loving the free parking for our customers. Keep it going, please, and thank you. So how long is that going to last?
Well, it's scheduled to last until the Union Street construction project is done, which is not too far away. So get your free parking now. Look, it's worked pretty well. Union Street, talking about infrastructure, that's another place that needed to be addressed. There's tons of work being done underground on water and sewer lines. It's not sexy stuff. It's not the stuff that, people, love to read about, but you have to do it. If you want to run the city the right way, those things have to be replaced. If you look at, I was just with the mayor of Lawrence. I was at an event in Boston this morning. I was with the mayor of Lawrence, Dan Rivera, who does a very good job in his city. And he just saw his city, blow up all over the place. Folks, I think, have paid some attention to that, but they had about 40 miles of pipeline now gas pipeline that have to be replaced, and some 7,000 homes that were damaged because of a series of gas explosions. Although that's not the city's responsibility, it is underground infrastructure. It's the responsibility of the utility, but it's a reminder that all this stuff that happens underground in the city has to be addressed, or else, you're going to be facing some big problems along the way. So, the Union Street's an example of that, and we think that it's going to look great, and the shops all down there will benefit from it.
So I'll ask a question here from Deborah Andre. So she's talking about cable companies, saying, can we get someone other than Comcast? We've talked about this in the past, and it sounds like we're kind of stuck with them.
Yeah. Comcast has an effective monopoly in the area, except for the Dish network, right? The Dish companies. We've tried to get Verizon to come in. We've tried to get others to come in. And the reality is that, there's more competition in the major cities and in the major metropolitan areas, and, mid-sized metropolitan areas like ours. There, a lot of cable companies don't want to spend the money on new infrastructure, the wiring and everything else to enter the market, because they think that they can't recoup those expenses over time, especially with competitors like Dish. There will be some options in the years ahead. Lots of people use the Dish networks. We're working on some stuff in the business districts around the city to perhaps offer high-speed internet services. There's more to come on that. And then, beyond that, in the next couple of years, you're going to start to see, people have probably heard a little bit about this, so-called fifth generation 5G service from the cell phone companies, which, depending on whom you ask, might start to replace traditional cable, right? Because the argument is the wireless connection is so strong that you don't need a wire to get things like television and other services that the cable company now provides.
Okay, so we got a bunch of comments in here. So let me go to one that I came up with earlier, and this is something that we've talked about a lot. So we've talked about the not being tough enough on some of the criminals, and they get released back into the city.
You mean the judges?
Judges. So Baker came up with the legislation, and he submitted to the legislator. Martigny backs it. Also, the DA backs it, and it's called the Dangerousness Reform Bill, and it's to expand the list of offenses for holding someone, and it also includes the defendant's history this time instead of just the case that they're facing. Do you think that's good enough, or should we get stronger on that, or is it a good start?
I think it would make a big difference. I think so. That bill, which I support, is essentially modeled on the federal pretrial release statute that says, look, if you're a risk of flight or you pose a danger to the community, you should be held pending trial. And that doesn't happen in state district court, and doesn't happen nearly enough in state superior court. But it happens in federal court, where I used to practice. And look, if someone comes in and they've got a bunch of priors, especially violent prior offenses, they'll be held regardless of what the underlying offense is, the offense for which they're appearing in court is. So I think that's really that would be a big lift, a big step forward. The other thing that I think will make a big difference too is that statute gives the state the ability to appeal a judge's decision. I think that's really important. Right now, in state court, the DA can't appeal a judge's decision. The DA is just stuck with the decision. The defendant can appeal, but the state can't. The district attorney can't. At the federal level, the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, can appeal a judge's bail decision. And so what this bill would do is it would authorize the DA's office to, effectively call the judge on a mistake. So they'd have the ability when the time is right to go to the appeals court and say, hey, look, the judge screwed up in releasing this person, overrule, please. So I think it would be a huge step forward. I'm not totally optimistic that our legislature, which is, full of criminal defense attorneys by trade, will embrace this. but I certainly support it, and I'll certainly lend my voice to those who are behind it.
So Becky asks, would love to have the new dog park open to surrounding towns. So this past weekend, they just had a celebration over there. I think they're gonna have a dunk tank. I think you and I were on that list of people to get dunked, but it was too cold. So
I didn't say it was too cold. For the record, I was fine with it.
Yeah, my pneumonia kicked in, and it was pretty.
So it was you. It was you who called it off. Okay.
I don't think I ended it. I think she still, before I canceled, was talking about it. But
right.
So is it going to stay New Bedford residents only for the time being, or you see it opening to the other towns in the future?
Yeah, they're still working out the kinks. They have the subscriber pass that I think seems to work pretty well, but it's all very new. The way we left it is that we should remain open to the possibility that others, at least from the towns, the immediate suburbs of New Bedford, could use it. And so if we open it up to them, you're probably talking about people from even further beyond. So there may have to be sort of a three-level charging system, right? Or three levels of prices. New Bedford price would be the lowest one, so immediately surrounding towns another, and then beyond that other. That's one possibility. That's kind of what we do with beach parking passes, more or less. But I think the answer is, to Becky's question, I'm open to it, but I just want to make sure that they've ironed out the kinks with the licensing, so that we can it can be done properly.
Okay, so after the last question here, and this one comes from Alana. So she's asking, how come Fairhaven has a mobile needle exchange, but New Bedford won't allow it? New Bedford has a needle problem there everywhere.
I think, what the feedback that I've gotten from most people about needle exchange is that, a couple of things. One is that they're skeptical that it would actually work. The second thing is that, there are a lot of folks who, have pointed out, I think correctly, that it's hard. I think it's hard for municipal government or government at any level to credibly tell people, especially children, don't do this, stay away from it, on the one hand, and then be actually facilitating drug use on the other hand, actually handing out the needles. And that's why, it hasn't been popular. Needle exchanges have not been popular. They've only been done in a few places around the country, like places like Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a few other similar communities. So, I tend to be sympathetic to that sentiment. All that said, there's an awful lot that we're doing to curb drug use, and it ranges from education in our schools, so that we have the appropriate messaging for students at starting as early as grade 4. We've beefed up interdiction. Our police department has, as you know, has arrested an awful lot of people trafficking in heroin as well as in fentanyl, and I think that's made a dent. Our Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force has been hard at work, and they've become a bit of a national model on how to deal with the opioid crisis. Our team was invited to an event in Boston a few months ago, put on by the National League of Cities, in which only 4 other cities around the country were invited to tell everybody what we're doing and how we're going about it, because we seem to be doing it better than most. And then there's our placement of people into treatment, as well as our advocacy at the state level for more curbs on the prescribing of opioid painkillers. So it's a multifaceted approach. We're going to continue at it. We've seen in the last year a 19% drop in fatal overdoses. That's a good thing. It's not nearly enough, but we're going to continue to work at it until we've got the problem under our control.
Okay, so that was the last question. I appreciate your time, and I think it was good doing this. Did you actually see the questions as I put them on the screen?
I did see them. Yeah.
So I think this might be a good way to do this. You can actually see the face of the people asking the question, actually see the question yourself. We got a lot more questions, but
I just don't like looking at my face the whole time, Mike. No, it's okay.
Yeah, we'll have to fix that. So
I'm focusing on you right here. I'm not looking at my screen.
Yeah. So we'll try this in the future. That way people can actually see the questions on the screen as well. And we got a lot of questions this week, so I'll hopefully see you next week, and we'll do this again like this. I think it might be the better way to do it.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Mitchell. Thanks everyone for tuning in.